Discover connection, awaken sacredness, become empowered. Join us for our show on Blog Talk Radio. Discover your spiritual gifts live.
Welcome to Discover Your Spiritual Gifts, show number 73. We are your hosts, Dave and
Vialet.
Our guest today is Wendell Perry. Wendell claims to have begun studying astrology when he was 14 years old, but since some say his mental age is roughly 16, it's difficult to estimate how many years that entails, so that's just some humor. In any case, he's published scores of articles in Mountain Astrologer magazine and Dell Horoscope magazine, and he has written several books. The first of these was The Mars-Venus Affair, which was published by Llewellyn Worldwide in 2000. His wife, Linda, is the co-author of that book. His second book was Saturn Cycles, Mapping Changes in Your Life, which was published by Llewellyn in 2009. It describes how the transits of Saturn impacted the lives of 24 celebrities, some for the better and some for the worse. Today, we will be discussing his new book, The Lunar Nodes, and how the lunar nodes, or nodes of the moon, relate to issues like reincarnation and the relationship between our individual consciousness and the broader consciousness that Wendell feels pervades the universe. The information contained in his website in the section called The Mars and Venus Playbook comes from the Mars-Venus Affair, though Wendell and Linda have revamped the material and expanded the examples. Their website, www.goodgollyastrology.com, is intended to be a fun and easy way to introduce you to astrology beyond the sun signs. Well, welcome, Wendell. Thank you so much for being on.
Well, thank you for that kind introduction.
You've been around for a while, haven't you?
Well, yes, I am. Obviously, this is radio, so you can't see, but I will own up to that. My face betrays me.
Well, I'm sympathetic in your introduction about the Saturn cycles because I went through big things at the Saturn returns. They really were major turning points in my life on both of them.
Yes. Well, you are in a majority there because I've done a lot of research on that, both for that book and since. And these Saturn cycle aspects do tend to be, major turning points. It isn't always an event. It isn't always something that comes to you from the outside. Sometimes it's just stuff inside you. Where you change your mind about something, change the way you feel about something, and 5 years from now you might not remember that happened on that date. Mm-hmm. But that cycle kind of brings it out. I had an experience of that recently myself when I had a recent Saturn cycle aspect. I was working on a book, and it was actually not the Lunar Node book. It was a book that I published previously in 2000 on the astrological houses. And in the course of working on that book, I was trying to speed up so I would have that, again, what we were just talking about, control. I wanted to be able to send this book to the publisher when I had this Saturn aspect coming up, because I thought that would be helpful. I thought it would, help me get what I wanted. But then as I got into writing it, I realized that I needed a little more material. And I was writing about the astrological houses, and I was writing about the sun in the astrological houses. And I said, well, I know I'll just include the moon signs, the moon houses. So I got started with that and got more and more involved in it. And, it became a more than half the book. And it was somewhat after this, and this is all happening during that Saturn cycle aspect. So by the time I got it to the publisher, of course, that was all over. And when I heard back from Llewellyn, they said, we want your book, but we want you to rewrite the whole first section about the sun in the houses. That's part of it. I thought was great. But do not touch the second part about the moon in the houses. We like that a lot. So it was, that was what came out of that Saturn cycle aspect, was that idea that, I can do something with the moon here, more where I was all focused on the sun in the houses. That's that's kind of how things can happen with Saturn cycle aspects.
Well, you make me wonder about something. You've been in astrology for a long time. You've probably read countless books in astrology. When you're creating a book for astrology, how much of it is what is the traditional views, what other people have written about for centuries, versus new insights that you come across either in correlating information, bring it together, or just actually intuitive downloads? What's the balance there?
Well, for me personally, it's always about curiosity. I get curious about something and say, well, I've got to, explore this. And when I guess I'm a little bit obsessive, so when I get started, researching something, I tend to get very much into it and gather a lot of information. And the next thing I know, well, hey, I've got enough information here. I could put this into a book. And so that's how it happens. If you look at the astrology books out there, a lot of them are, like pop songs. They are variations of old themes that, every time, every generation, has their own way of saying them. But there are a lot of new things out there too. We have the whole Cooper Belt objects, the planetoids out there. We have people are exploring more, of the astrology from India. I have a good friend who was working with something called vibrational astrology, which is a different approach to astrology using I can't really explain it, but it's about vibrations rather than actual the whole traditional astrological reading. So there's a little bit of a combination of both. There's a lot of people have new ideas and they want to get them out there, and some of us, me included, work with the themes that are already existent and just try to find new ways to explore them and to explain them and to make and to kind of, there's so much. These things are so deep in terms of what's there. You can reach in there over and over. You can always pull out something that's just fascinating and new.
Well, we were talking before the show, and I'd like to rehash that a little bit. So, am I Dave Barnett? Am I a slave to my chart? Did my chart, is it my roadmap? I'm stuck with it. On the flip side, I can use it for predictive capability for what's coming up for me. How much do I have free will still seeing the chart, and how much variability does the chart have in saying this is a trend, but this isn't the specifics?
Well, the thing is that, I think, as I said before, every astrological indicator, every house, every sign, every planet has multiple meanings. And they can be good and they can be bad. They can be positive. They can be things that help you. They can be things that hold you back. So there is a certain degree of, basically your choice in this. Are you going to use say a Neptune aspect? Neptune has to do with spirituality. You can use that, and use that side of Neptune, and you can prosper. On the other hand, Neptune has to do with confusion and a lack of purpose and addictions to drugs and alcohol. Get that side of it, then you're going in a whole different direction. So, your choices do matter. Now, the symbolism, of Neptune, let's say you have a horoscope that's very much dominated by Neptune, you have a range that you can deal with. But the difference in terms of what happens to you in your life, if you choose one way or the other, the repercussions of that, are infinite. So that's the free will starts with your assumption of what is my attitude toward the chart? What is my attitude toward this situation in my horoscope? And how am I going to deal with that?
Okay. Okay. So you still, the doors in front of you may be limited, but you still always have a choice on which door you're going to go through.
Yes. And the thing is that the first door you choose impacts the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth. And, that's, and they're all going to be within that range of symbolism. Right? The symbolism, again, we're just dealing here with Neptune. And really, in reality, every horoscope has multiple directions in it in terms of what, all different planets and all different houses and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Well, what you're saying kind of makes me think back, you being a skilled astrologer, if somebody approaches you and they say, I have my birthday, but I don't have my birth time, and for you to be able to start looking at their chart and adjusting to see what makes sense to you based on what you learn about them, and then use that for more explanatory purposes. So does that work for you?
Well, it's hard. It's very hard to start with just the birthday and no information at all about the time. Most people have an idea. Mama told me I was born at midnight, or Mama told me I was born in the morning, or whatever. And that's something you can work with. One of the reasons, one of the books I wrote was on, again, as I said, the astrological houses. And one of the reasons, the thing that got me started with that, again, curiosity, was that I really felt that, I wanted something where I could, that would tell me where the sun should be and what house the sun should be and what house the moon should be. So I could do that kind of, rectification is what we call it in astrology. Again, over too far with the terms, but that's what it's called, rectification. And so if you know what house you're looking for the sun, then that helps you get that, do that rectification. And that's what really started me writing that particular book, Behind the Horoscope, was on that idea of how where would I start if I was rectifying the chart in terms of where I would put the house, the sun in the horoscope. And that's a big factor in determining the time of birth. One of the bigger factors is where the sun and moon will end up in the houses.
I have one astrologer who knows me very well, and when he was doing my chart, he said, Dave, I did your chart with the birthday or birth time you gave me, but he said, something just didn't feel right. And he said, I moved it about 5 minutes. And he said, I don't think they recorded the correct birth time for you.
That happens. And it is, there's a lot of astrologers with a lot of headaches because of that.
Yeah.
And for me, for example, I was born in Eastern Kentucky. And at the time I was born, Eastern Kentucky was on the Central Time. And I started out astrology using that as my time of birth. I knew the time of birth, but it didn't say what time zone it was, so I assumed it was Central. Well, after I got into astrology, my chart was not working well at all. And then someone who was also born in Eastern Kentucky showed me a birth certificate where the time was listed as Eastern Standard Time. And since then, I found out that not only in Kentucky, but in a lot of these states where the time zone moved from from Eastern to Central and back again, and the hospitals would use whatever the doctor wanted, I guess. I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure what the criteria was. But some will be in Central and some will be in Eastern. And since I think David Cochran has changed his program, he has a program to chart horoscopes to include disclaimers about if you were born in this state during this period of time, the time zone may not be correct. And mine was not correct. And I found out that it was actually Eastern time. And the horoscope of Eastern time works much better. It's not as favorable. The Central time gave me a nice, quiet, calm Taurus ascendant. But I'm an Aries all the way through.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about your book on the lunar nodes. Help us understand more about the moon's influence on us.
Well, it's actually the nodes is somewhat different than the moon. The nodes have, essentially, they are not planets. They are basically mathematical points. There are points on the orbit of the moon where it intersects the apparent orbit, the orbit as we see it from Earth, of the sun around the moon. Where those two intersect, that's the one node. Well, actually, it's a circle, so they intersect 2 points opposite one another. Why that's important is because when the sun and the moon get to those 2 points at the same time, or either opposite or together, you get an eclipse. The sun is blocked out by the moon, or the shadow of the Earth blocks out the moon from our viewpoint. So that's what they are, and they've been used in Eastern astrology, particularly Indian astrology, for many, many, many generations. And they're sort of strongly associated with reincarnation there. They were sort of picked up by Western astrologers late 19th century, through theosophy and so forth. And they've become, very popular for American astrologers to use them, and for Western astrologers to use them. There's a whole branch of astrology that just, that called it evolutionary astrology, which makes an extensive use of the nodes of the moon. And again, I was curious about them, and I decided that I needed to explore it more. I'll give you the whole spiel about how my journey through this book, because it was kind of a journey. Because I started out, I tend to be a more event-oriented astrologer, more about what happens to people and the traits and qualities that we can see in their behavior. That was where I was starting. And the book on the Saturn Cycles, for example, is very much about that kind of thing. My book on the houses, also, very much about that kind of earthbound sort of behaviors. And so when I started working with the nodes, I started out at that point. What can I find about these connections between the nodes and the planets that I can say, okay, this is a discernible, evidence, or is it a discernible event, discernible trait that the person has, and is connected to this aspect between the nodes and the planets. Well, and at first I found some pretty exciting things. I found that a lot of people some people who had a planet closely aspecting to the nodes, the moon, because if you're aspecting one, you're aspecting both, because they're opposite, directly opposite. You would see strong evidence of that particular planet in the behavior of the person. For example, I started out with the sun, and people who have the sun aspecting the nodes, and I came up with people like Donald Trump, very good example. Boris Johnson, another example. Gerald Bolsonaro, I can't think of his name, the president of president of Brazil, another example. And Howard Stern, and a lot of other people who have that aspect. And I thought, oh, I'm onto something here. But then when I got into really getting more and more examples, which is what happens sometimes, I found that wow moment kind of got dissolved, because I found a lot of people who did not exhibit those kind of extraordinary solar traits with the sun aspecting that. So I said, okay, I'm giving up on this one. So I just put it aside, wrote a couple more books, just kept on going with something else. But I had that in the back of my mind. And so finally, after I finished, it was a book on the houses. I said, I'm going to pick this up again and look at it. And in the meantime, I had gotten a different idea about the nodes, the moon. I realized they are not planets. They don't act like planets. The planets describe basic functions of being a human being. The sun is where we shine. The moon is where we feel. Mercury is where we think. and so forth and so on. The nodes are something different. The nodes really are a gateway, and it's a gateway that connects us, our consciousness on this level, with that greater, whatever you want to call it, consciousness of around the universe.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a million names for it, but it's out there.
Yeah.
And through when an aspect in the horoscope aspects the nodes, what comes to us is, and I call it the archetype. I mean, you can call it whatever. Actually, in the book, my first draft of the book, I called it a visitor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But Llewellyn thought that's not too much of alien visitations, so we had to change that. But that comes into your life. That archetype, the sun's aspecting the nodes, and this is solar archetype. If it's Venus aspecting the nodes, it's the Venus archetype. And now, what that does for you depends on your horoscope. If you have a horoscope that really reinforces all those qualities, those solar qualities or Venus qualities, well, then you're going to, this is going to supercharge that. It's like, you're plugged into the powerful plug there, and it's going to be much more demonstrative. But if you don't, then it's going to be like a guest. It's going to sit there in your living room and make pleasant conversation, but it's not going to change anything. It's not going to change the way you live your house. You're not going to decorate your house. It's not going to mow your yard. It's not going to change things. Yeah. Unless there are situations that arise that pertain directly to that. But for the most part, not going to. But it's still there. And it's still in the background of your existence. And it will show itself through in certain situations in your life that pertain directly to that symbolism. So that's where I got I got away from the events and got into this is really more of a spiritual issue, because really what we're talking about is how you spiritually relate to that archetypal image that comes to you through the aspects to the nodes. And that's where that was a journey for me.
Fascinating. Thank you. So the lunar nodes, that's kind of like an extension to a horoscope. If somebody is casting your horoscope and they're talking, then the next tier down of information would be something to do with the lunar nodes then.
Yeah, you can do an interpretation without the nodes. There's not necessary. And what's one of the reasons that I started looking at them, because I figured they have to have some kind of relevance to the horoscope. The thing is once you could, what you're understanding when you're doing that interpretation without the nodes is just basically the person's psychological astrology, how you exist in this world, how you get by, how you survive, and that's all. That's great. I mean, for a lot of people, that's all they really want to know. They want to know how when's my next promotion going to come through? When am I going to meet Mr. Right? When am I going to when is my health going to improve? That sort of thing. And certainly there's nothing wrong with that. But when you get into the nodes, you're talking more about something that, and also you're talking about issues involving past lives, because that is what the nodes were traditionally associated with in Indian astrology, and a lot of Western astrologers also make use of that. I tried to, when I was talking about past lives in the Lunar Nodes book, I did talk about it quite a bit. I tried to not be too, definite, like, say, oh, well, if you have this planet aspect in your nose, then you were this or you were that. Because I feel like, even though I'm quite confident that reincarnation happens, I'm just not sure if it's the only thing that happens. And there are greater mysteries out there that we can't really claim to have complete knowledge of. And So I wanted to leave a space for that in the book. So I tried very hard not to be too definite when I was talking about what the nodes of the moon mean in terms of reincarnation.
Okay. Well, we're going to take a short break here. We're going to be right back after some messages about Discover Your Spiritual Gifts.
Hi, I'm Violet Rain, Master Teacher of the Akashic Records series of classes here at Discover Your Spiritual Gifts. If you've been interested in the Akashic Records are the life book or the etheric records of everything that we've ever thought, spoken, done, all of our contracts, relationships since we left Source. It is a valuable resource of information that people are able to tap into to get clarity, to get guidance, just to find out why things are the way they are in their life. The Akashic really helps us do that. This is a great series of classes if you're already getting intuitive information, meaning you're either getting visuals or you're hearing things or you just know things or you feel things. This is a great class to step into to amplify the information that you're receiving from a higher level of source versus just your intuition. If you'd like to find out more about my series of classes for the Akashic Records, please check out on our website under classes and look for Akashic Record Certification. I hope to see you in class, or I hope to see you at the center here at Discover Your Spiritual Gifts. Have a great day and thanks for listening.
Well, welcome back to Discover Your Spiritual Gifts with our guest Wendell Perry and his fascinating stories about astrology and his books. So thank you again, Wendell, for being with us here today.
I'm having a good time.
Good. That's always important.
So let's talk about, for people that are listening, Wendell, we're talking about nodes and houses and astrology and all that. For a lot of people just jumping on their path, this can be overwhelming. And I know your approach is to make it fun and easy. Yeah. So talk to us about how you can take this really complicated, what I see complicated and expansive information.
I agree.
And how do you make it easy and fun? I want to know how we make it easy and fun. And for those that don't understand astrology at all, how can this benefit us?
Well, okay. I'm not sure if the easy and fun. I mean, the thing is about on my website, I do have the Mars Venus book on the website for people. Just it's free. The book is out of print now, so I just put all the information on the. I took back the copyright from Llewellyn and I just put it all on the website. And I try to make that part fun because it is just it's about sexuality, it's about romance. And it's only part of the story, of course, but it's a fun. I try to put it into a fun context. And I think what you have to, if you want to have fun with astrology, you have to realize first and foremost that you're only dealing with part of the story. And you can make jokes about how secretive your Scorpio friend is, or how loud your Leo friend is, and so forth and so on. And that's fine, Leos get a little bit loud. I get a little bit loud. I'm a Leo. Scorpios are a little bit inscrutable sometimes. But, you have to remember that that's just part of the story. And each one of these symbols has a mass of information associated with it. So, but you can still have the fun. You don't have to, you don't have to know everything to have the fun. And that's kind of what's nice about astrology, and that you can sort of dabble in it and still get something out of it, but not necessarily get pulled into the whole thing. Although, of course, as an astrologer, I'm saying, come on, get into it. Come on.
Let's dive really deep, right? Let's get really, really deep.
Oh, that's where the good stuff is. It's like the gold nuggets at the bottom of the lake. You got to dive in and hold your breath and get down there and get them.
I think people need to realize, we were talking about it before we started the show. COVID was a great example. we couldn't predict exactly what that was because we didn't know what we were looking at. We knew something was going to happen. We knew some kind of energy was coming in, but we didn't necessarily know exactly. And sometimes we can get information and we know there's going to be a challenge or an obstacle or it's going to be easy flow, but we may not know what that really means until we walk through that door, right?
Yeah. Well, the thing a lot of astrologers will say, and I'm one of them, is that astrology is a great method of timing. It's not a great method of describing. We can say when with some degree of accuracy. What? Oh, it drives us crazy. And that's, and that is an issue. Can I say just something about prediction for a second here?
Yeah,
please.
Because this is kind of something I've been thinking about for a while. Because astrologers are very much in the prediction business. I mean, we can see what happened with a particular configuration of the planets in the past, and we can look ahead and see when that particular configuration is going to happen again. And we can make assumptions about what's going to happen at that time from what happened in the past. And that gives us a sense of power sometimes. But as I said before, every astrological indicator has several different meanings, multiple meanings. So there's no real way to, that power is pretty flimsy when you get right down to it. But still, our clients and people expect astrologers to make predictions. I mean, it's a sort of in our image. But the thing is that astrology isn't really about prediction. That's not really what's important about astrology, and its relation to what happens to us in the future or whatever. Astrology is about exploring and understanding the rhythm of the universe and how the rhythm of your life fits into that rhythm. So when an aspect happens, a transit of some sort, Saturn aspects your Venus or whatever, something might happen there. And again, it could be something, an event, like you may get married, or maybe you'll break up with your spouse, or it may be something more internal, more about your feelings and your thought. But what's important is not whether or not an astrologer could have predicted that. What's important is that this is an indication of how your life is in rhythm with that rhythm of the universe. That rhythm is what, that's your connection. And of course, that establishing that connection is, on a spiritual level, is what prayer is about, is what meditation is about. It's about so many spiritual practices is about making that connection. Well, astrology gives you that connection pretty much every day if you know where to look for it. And the thing is that it's the same connection, whether it's a good thing to happen or whether something you really don't, it's a bad thing that happens. It's still that connection. And sometimes you're the drummer and sometimes you're the drum, but it's still the connection. It's still that rhythm. And so that's what's important, not the predicting part. It's the feeling that you are in that rhythm and that sense of connection that brings you.
I love that explanation of rhythm. Rhythm and sound and frequency has been coming up a lot for me lately. It really keeps showing up in a lot of my teachings and things that I'm teaching and what I'm pulling in. Like you, I get curious about things. And rhythm and sound and frequency have been huge for me. So I can understand that. It's also really true is we can't predict the lotto win. If we could, we'd all be doing it. We can't predict when the housing market's going to crash, because if we could, we'd all be doing it. We can't predict when our business is going to be successful, because if there was a magic pill that we could figure out how to do that, we'd all do that, because this is about our experience, the choices we make,
Yes.
how we walk through that energy, that rhythm, whether we surrender and let go, whether we fight it, or how we face it. I think that's where our growth and experience comes in, right? Sometimes it's nice to know, and I know Dave does this, when things happen out there, he's calling his astrologer, what's going on in the planets, what's happening in the house, because I've heard him talk about it, what's going on in the alignment, because something's happening and energetically that I see I'm getting hits on. So what does it look like? We can look at it from that perspective, but it's almost like the Leos all out there reading the horoscope. Your energy is going to be different than my husband, who's a Leo's energy, and how you take that energy and what you do with it is completely different, right?
Exactly.
That's what makes us all kind of different in what we do. So it's learning that, yes, these are great information. It gives us insight to what's happening, why the energy feels really heavy now, or why it feels really light, or why things are moving easy, or why there's a little bit of a challenge. But again, it's down to us, right?
The book I wrote on the Saturn cycles, one of the premises was that a lot of what happens to you in the Saturn cycle has to do with the choices you made before. You know, Saturn is kind of the archetype of Saturn is a teacher, and the teacher gives you homework. And if you do your homework, the next Saturn cycle aspect probably going to be pretty good for you. If you don't do your homework, maybe not so much. Now, the thing is that since I wrote that book, I've done a lot more research into aspects, and I realized that sometimes Saturn doesn't test you on what you expect to be tested on. You got this down. Okay, well, let's see about this. And so that's what the teacher does. And of course, the purpose of that is education. Your education is, a human being dealing with the world.
You know, that sounds like some of us come here and we do our work, and some of us don't. Right? Some of us come here and we do our work because we want to move ahead. We want to evolve. We want to grow. We want to leave something, or we want to contribute something. And we have those that are sitting on the sidelines. They don't want to do the work. They're just passing time, right? So it's a whole different thing. When you're doing the work, you're kind of moving with that energy in those cycles so that it's easier. I think it's easier when we do the work. I don't think it's easy sitting on the sideline. They might think it's easy, but I don't think it's easy sitting on the sideline. They have...
people find their own way to do, the two things. I hate to say, for example, one of the things that we get when we're doing astrology, you'll find some horoscopes that just so easy. Everything just seems to flow very nicely. And for those people, life doesn't offer a whole lot of challenges usually. They get in a nice rut, they follow that rut, things go pretty well for them. It doesn't mean they're going to be fantastically successful. It just means that they can stay in that rut and be relatively happy. But then you have these horoscopes where there's a lot of things happening, a lot of challenges. And, again, it's your choices, how you deal with those challenges. But the people who deal with them well usually, are advancing in some way, either spiritually, sometimes, in terms of prosperity, but it's a growth thing. And those hard, difficult situations, you grow out of them if you approach them in the right way.
So what are some good examples? Because I know you wrote a book about houses and celebrities. What are some good examples of houses and celebrities that you could share with us that people go, oh, I see that. I see that.
Well, one of my favorite ones is the second house, because the second house has always been associated with money.
Okay.
And I did a lot of research for these books, and the book, this is behind the horoscope book, so I found that the second house, if you have the sun in the second house, it's not like you have an ATM machine in your front yard. It doesn't work that way. What it is that you have a resource that you can use to make your living. Now, it could be intelligence. One of the examples that I pulled out was Frank Sinatra and Edith Piaf, the French singer. But there were two high-profile examples that both of them had just a gift for singing. Now, they took time to develop that gift. They took voice lessons. Even after the careers had started, both of them, after their careers had started, went back and took voice lessons to improve their voice and improve their range and so forth. But they used the resource that they had, that they'd been given. And they didn't go out and buy that. It was already there. And that's what the second house is. How are you going to use the resources that you're given? And whether that's a huge inheritance or a miracle voice or intelligence or negotiating ability or the ability to talk real fast or whatever. How are you going to use it? That's two examples from the second house. See, with the 10th house, that was it was interesting. I'm trying to think of some good examples of that. But what a lot of times it's not that the person was tremendously successful. It was that they were identified with whatever role they were playing professionally. They were, for example, Albert Einstein. Now, of course, he's a great scientist. But when people think of a scientist, they think of Albert Einstein. They may think of Albert Einstein. I mean, because he is the quintessential science. He put his image up there, it's science. And that's the 10th house. The sun, he has a sun in the 10th house, and he has been so identified with his profession that they become almost symbolic of each other. And there are several other examples of that. Let's see, I think Napoleon was one of them, I'm not sure, but there were several other examples of that. People who just, we identify with their image with that profession or that way of life.
I love that because it kind of puts that. I know somebody that does numerology. Mm-hmm. She does numerology for celebrities, and it's awesome to see how all that lines up just really perfectly, and dates and birth dates and how this comes in. Because same idea. This is astrology. She's using numerology. So I love those aspects. So talk to us about if somebody wanted to contact you, could they contact you, and how do they find your books and your website, and how do they align with your information?
It all comes down to Good Golly Astrology. That is my handle to the world. My books are available through, most of them are. I have one book I self-published, but the Mars Venus book is not longer in print, and it's available on my website. But the books are available through Llewellyn Publications. They're available on, of course, Amazon. If you want to give Jeff Bezos more money, I'm sure he'd appreciate it. And you can buy them from me from my website as well. I will also appreciate that.
I love it.
I'll probably be able to tell when your money from what money I already have. Results, it doesn't make any difference. So that's as far as reading horoscopes, I've kind of withdrawn from that in the last couple of years. I still have that available, and I do see a client every once in a while. I just did a update for an old client just the other day. But I've kind of withdrawn because I wanted to focus on writing and some research. I have several things in my head, and I realized that, hey, it's, the clock's running down, folks. You want to express these ideas, then you better get there and start typing. And so I have withdrawn from the horoscope interpretations because of that. But I'm still open to that, and it's good to do one every once in a while, because for an astrologer, there is no greater pleasure than looking at a horoscope and seeing it, it's open up for you. You were talking about the time of birth question. I was at an event about 2 weeks ago. It was a local event, and my local astrology group was holding an event. And I just walked in because I wasn't actually planning to be there because I, COVID and various other concerns. But I came in, and so they were printing out horoscopes for people. And then they would just sort of point them to an astrologer who was in the crowd, have him, read your horoscope. So I had, I was there only about an hour, but I did 3 of these very quick impromptu readings. 2 of them, again, opened up like a book. It's like I knew exactly what I was talking about. 3rd one, wait a minute. It's not opening up. It's it's like you have a book you're trying to open up and the pages are glued together, and I mumbled around a little bit and talked to the woman, and then she said, well, I don't know exactly when I was born. My mother says around 9 o'clock. I don't know how accurate that is. Oh, okay. Because in her horoscope particularly, some major things changed with about maybe 5 or 10 minutes difference in time. So I said, well, I'm sorry, but I would have to sit down with this one and really do some rectification and changing before I could do anything with it. When I'm sitting here in this room, I'm not going to be able to do that. So I handed it back to her and said, that's about the best I can do for you right now. But that's how time can make us sweat.
Well, obviously, if just 5 minutes for Dave and time zone can have a big effect.
Oh, yeah.
It makes
that's a whole hour.
Right? Makes real sense that it can have a big impact on what the time is. So
and that's why astrologers are so irritating and asking for that exact time. No, go back to your mom and ask, where's your birth certificate?
Yeah.
Right?
We get people's nerves sometimes with that, but hey, it's the business.
It is. Well, Wendell, thank you so much for being on our show today. It has been so much fun getting to chat with you and getting some insight with astrology. Always a fun subject to talk about. Very complicated, very complex, but love. It almost feels to me like a mathematician, like putting all the numbers and everything together, right?
So there's a lot of math involved in astrology, a lot of astronomy.
I can believe that. And the engineer below us, Mr. Dave, he probably gets into that complicated.
Well, the computers have helped. I mean, the computers have removed a lot of the math because we can just punch in the dates and
and then it calculates it out. Pretty awesome.
I started out doing it all by hand, so I've got that skill in my back pocket if I ever want to really get into it. Hopefully it'll never happen.
Right?
If all the computers go away, I can still do horoscopes.
Thank goodness we have technology, right?
Yeah.
So thank you so much for being on the show, and you guys can check out his website, Good Golly Astrology. Kind of a fun website. As Dave said earlier, I will never forget that website. I will know where that is.
Well, thank you so much, Wendell. This has been a treat.
Okay.
And for our listeners, please stay with us for messages from several of our practitioners at DYSG. They'll be following this show. Have a great week. Take care.
I am Lisa Elaine, 2-time international best-selling author, teacher, intuitive artist, reader, and healer at Discover Your Spiritual Gifts. I am a very creative, artistic person who has been an intuitive empath my whole life. As a child, I was always aware of energy. I could detect shifts as people entered the room, which I thought all people could do. I didn't realize I was an empath until much later in life. I have studied various modalities, attended several retreats to peel back layers of childhood experiences to create a toolbox I use to navigate this world with intention. I am now pairing my intuitive gifts with my creativity to live an intentional life and empower other women to shine their brightest light, to manifest an abundant life with creativity and intention. If this resonates with you, join me at Discover Your Spiritual Gifts the first Thursday of each month at 6:30 at my Women's Intention Play Shops. The focus of each class varies on a different intention to heal, inspire, and empower each of you with a simple art project. In this class, we set the intention into what you create, so when you bring it home, you are reminded of what you are manifesting or releasing each time you look at it. This keeps the energy moving, which helps you create a more empowered version of yourself. If you prefer one-on-one time, I offer intuitive tree readings. You simply draw me a tree any way you feel guided. Coupled with your intention, we edit the tree so you have a visual of how you want to create a life of joyous empowerment. If this is calling you, I can be reached at 720-257-9441 or at lisaelaine.com. Tap into your inner magic to create an amazing toolbox of your own by joining me, Lisa Elaine, at Discover Your Spiritual Gift.
I'm Kate Thomason, a.k.a. the Joy Architect. And they call me the Joy Architect because I help people build lives based on their joy. I learned from a near soul death what it takes to make a life joyful, because I realized that that was what was missing. And when I brought it all back in, I realized, aha, this is how it works. This is how you make life fun. You bring the soul in, and now I have a method, a process by which people can have this relationship with themselves, their greater self, very quickly. And they find that foundation of fun in their life that they can use to build their life on. I'm a practitioner at Discover Your Spiritual Gifts, so they can look on the website under the practitioners there. Or you can find me at my website, KatherineBlakeThomason.com, KathereIne, Blake, Blake, Thomason, ToMasson.com. I'm available by appointment 7 days a week. I work at the center on Fridays from 10 to 5.
Hi, my name's Heather McCormick-Ramey, and I'm a medium and energy healer. I love helping people connect deeply with spiritual messages, with ancestors, and all of that amazing support that is surrounding them. Now, Spirit started working with me at a very young age, and as I created more and more space for those messages to come through, it's been a really life-changing experience. And this is what I offer to my clients. So if you're interested in mediumship, look to book at Discover Your Spiritual Gifts. I'm there as a reader, and I also have practitioner hours as an energy healer. With the energy healing, I help my clients bust through limiting beliefs and really live their soul-aligned life. So please reach out to Discover Your Spiritual Gifts if you're interested in learning more and connecting deeply with your soul's purpose and spirit. I look forward to seeing you soon.
Discover connection, awaken sacredness, become empowered. Join us for our show on Blog Talk Radio.